Journey with Judy. Honest, open, transparent. It's hot.
There's no such thing as perfect people. There's no such thing as a perfect life. So come as you are, broken and scarred. Lift up your heart and be amazed.
So good morning and Happy New You. Happy New Year. Happy New You. We are 1 week into 2018 and I am so super curious if you are killing your resolution, just killing it in the area of those things that you resolved to do, to not do, to do more of, to do less of, or if you have literally been killed and absolutely gave up your resolutions. Here's what I noticed. Okay, we just celebrated the Epiphany, right? So that is this sudden striking realization, right? This religious discovery in any situation where we are enlightened about something that we once couldn't understand, but now we have this new, deeper perspective and wisdom around. So I had this major epiphany about these resolutions, and here's the deal. I made resolutions before my 4 children were under the same roof with my husband and I. For these, a couple kids were home for a couple weeks. They're all gone now. I'll save those tears for a minute. And one was home for just 4 days. And so I made resolutions. I was resolute and determined to make it the best Christmas break ever. And so that meant like being more grateful and less hateful. It meant less judging and more nudging. Like I just get all up in their grill and I have this expectation of how things are supposed to go. And when they don't go how I planned, I think we talked about this a little bit last week. It's hard for me to trust that maybe it's going to go better than my little plan, right? And so what was so cool is I think I got the stamp from all of them. And they're the ones who really decide that it was the best time home that they've ever had. And what's so crazy is that my man and I, we didn't lower the bar in terms of expectations. We expected the same thing from our kids, but we showed up in a different way. And we were just more patient and loving and kind. And, that is absolutely only by the grace of God, because there's times where I literally can see why people harm their children. And so they just can push your buttons, even though you don't have any. They say things that are so hateful. And it's like, if they had a filter, they would never, if they knew how much their words cut to the core and how my man and I talk for hours about something they said that, did they really mean it? What do you think they meant? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And generally they are very, very quick to just clarify what we were hoping they didn't mean by what they said is exactly what they meant. So anyway, praising God for the fact that I can check this off my list, that I'm starting 2018 in such a positive way, personally, socially, mentally, financially, and maybe, I can sell you on this concept, the most important piece of the puzzle, which is spiritually, because all solutions are spiritual. And I think we talked a little bit about this last week too, talking about the wise men. Yesterday was the Epiphany. Today is Epiphany Sunday. We are talking about these 3 really wise guys who were super confused, but they followed the light. Even when it got dim, another guy said, let me just bring that into focus. They followed. And what they found could not have been any stranger. It was so a million times better when they found Jesus in the manger. And so I'm sure that their resolution to get there was easier said than done. But once they got there, they found the begotten Son. And so I am totally digging that. And we want to talk today about, do you make a resolution? If you do, why do you? Is it making them? Is it keeping them? Who makes them? Who doesn't? You're journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1. And we're praising God for 2018. Fresh start, new day, new way, new you. We'll be back after the break. Yeah, so welcome back. I did have this major epiphany, right? This sudden realization, this religious discovery that all solutions are spiritual. And the way my husband and I showed up, the way Bob and I showed up was we were so mindful and so intentional of how to navigate this time with our kids. And we we can absolutely check the fact that the mission got accomplished. And you know what? My kids said, like, you guys were different. And you know what we were thinking? They were different. But the reality was, God was present in such a profound way that, you know, perfect love, you know, this is kind of off topic today, but perfect love does not take offense. And so when somebody says something or does something, like most of the time, it's not even about you. And if you're loving somebody, you're always desiring the highest and best good. You're giving the benefit of the doubt. You're doing more of some things and less of another. And here's what I noticed. I noticed that my man and I were doing less judging and more appreciating. We were doing less withholding of information and more sharing. We were doing less knowing, right? Less knowing, because I got to tell you, sometimes I think I just know and I actually don't know. And so that's why I was doing less knowing and more discovering. And we were doing less criticizing and more celebrating. And so I don't know, maybe it's about that in 2018. Maybe it's not about stopping and starting. That feels so difficult, right? When you tell yourself, like, I'm going to not do that, all of a sudden you want to do it more than ever. When if we can just approach some of this stuff, like, this is what I want. And so in order to get what I want, I need to be doing less of this and more of this. And you guys got to fill in these blanks, but stay with me, because this is the time where people are really making decisions. They're trying to, like, put the past behind them, move forward, embrace a new year, which oftentimes requires a new you, like a new you, seeing things differently, knowing things differently, hearing things, taking action that maybe you didn't take in order to step into these new possibilities. So I don't know how many of you made resolutions, but here's what I know. I know that it's not the making of them, it's the keeping. I mean, it's so easy on, you know, the weeks before New Year's, or maybe when you're a little overserved on New Year's Eve, you're making these big resolutions. I know that when I used to smoke 4,000 cigarettes on New Year's Eve because I was going to quit New Year's Day. But of course, New Year's Day already happened when you're celebrating and still smoking and drinking on New Year's Day. But anyway, the fact is, it's not about making it. It's about keeping it, right? So the question is, are they too big? Are these visions, dreams, hopeful expectations, resolutions, are they too big, too vague, or are they simply unattainable? And here's the thing. Feel comforted, acknowledged, and validated in the fact that you're not alone, because here's what happens. Only 43% of people make a resolution, right? 43% of people make them. By this time, which is literally 1 week in, 75% of the 43%, which isn't very many to begin with, but it's a lot when you consider 75% have given up by week 1 and 38% give up within a month. So how sad is it that 97% of our resolutions go unfulfilled, unattained, unrecognized? Like, that is so super sad to me, because here's the deal. If it's been brought to the surface by you, recognizing that if I did less of this and more of that, my life would change, I would step into a better version of myself, then what? How sad is it that 97% of the resolutions don't get fulfilled, which means what percentage of us are walking around unfulfilled? Well, here's the deal. I am a believer that all solutions are spiritual. So regardless of what your solution is, relationally, socially, financially, whatever, the bottom line is, if you can start with the spiritual piece, I'm a believer that our lives change when our habits change, right? And so I would just ask you, like, what are you willing to do that you don't want to do, right? It's so easy to say, I want this, but I'm not willing to do something different to have it. We've all heard that quote, like, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you always got. And what do you want, right? What do you want? Here's the thing. Resolutions are grounded in flesh, right? We can't do it if they're rooted in that. But I'll tell you, if they are rooted in God, they are rooted in His Word and in His truth. I am telling you, when we can commit to, confess when, and have confidence that, everything is possible for him who believes, we got a pretty good chance of kicking that thing that we know would change our life for the better. You're journeying with Judy right here on Link 96.1. And thank you to Greg Cunis for sponsoring our show. We'll be back.
86,400 seconds. 86,400 seconds. 86,400 seconds. Make 'em count, make 'em matter, make it now, make forever.
Okay, so there's only 86,400 seconds in a day, and what are you doing? What are you not doing? What do you need to be doing more of? And what could you honestly benefit from doing less of? I mean, let's be honest, open, and transparent. There are some things in our life that if we could just tackle once and for all, it would change our relationships, our financial situation, our social life, our marriage, our family, like whatever that thing is. And we all got that thing, right? And it doesn't seem like a big thing when we compare it to other people's things, but the reality is it is the one thing, right? It's the one thing that if we were to let go of once and for all, it would change everything. So why don't we change it? Why do we make a resolution? Why do we give up after a week? Why do we entirely give up? Why do we ultimately accept that we accept not being satisfied, fulfilled, or content? Like, I want to be in relationships with people who are satisfied, fulfilled, and content. Because I got to tell you, people who are satisfied, fulfilled, and content, those are people I've known consistently who have hearts full of gratitude. Like, they see the joy in circumstances and suffering. They're grateful not only what is, but what isn't, what could be, what can't be. So sometimes we just want to take a shortcut, right? There's no shortcuts to any place worth going. Like, we're going to need a savior to be successful, to be resolute and resolve in our resolution keeping. We are going to need a savior to be successful. So how about this? I sat down with all the kids and asked them, like, what is the thing that you will be working on or hoping to accomplish in 2018? And it was interesting because most of what they said was more about being than doing. And I thought that was kind of cool that, you know, we're sometimes so busy being human beings or human doings instead of human beings. Sometimes it's just about how we are, how we're being. Are we being loving and patient and kind and joyful, right? Are we being or are we doing? So love, number one, perspective. If we're approaching our resolutions, we got to have perspective, right? These three wise guys, they had a optimistic, hopeful mindset, which is simply is just believing in one's ability to create a better reality. And I think what happens is we get some negative self-talking going, and then we think, well, we can't, and we won't, and if we shouldn't, and we shouldn't, and we wouldn't, all that stuff, right, causes us to be disengaged, right? And the difference in people who are highly engaged and people who are massively disengaged, because people who are engaged absolutely believe this. They have this optimistic, hopeful mindset and perspective, and they believe in their ability to have the future being bigger than the past. Okay, so being optimistic is easier and has more benefits. It allows us to persevere through stuff. You know, I know so many parents, and I'm one of them, who would love to like take their kids' pain away. Like, I just want to make it all better. But the reality is when we make it all better, we make it all worse. We make it worse when they don't go through and grow through what they go through to become the people they're supposed to be, right? So there's a difference in being optimistic versus that pessimistic, gloomer, doomer. You know, one of my kids, I said to him, you know, buddy, like, the glass is refillable. And he responded by saying, Mom, for me, it's like always empty. Okay, it's not half full. It's not half empty. It's literally empty. And that's sad to me, because if what you look for is what you see, and if you look for what's wrong, then that's what you're going to find. But what you think about is what you bring about. And so I'm praying that you guys find this silver lining, this thread of faith, right? Finding blessings in curses, realizing that only God, like we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that with God, all things are possible, right? So yes, it's impossible for you, but with God, all things are possible, right? So we know how the story ends. We know that Jesus has the victory in these areas of our life, but it requires us, right, to just get underneath, like kind of move a little bit. Jesus is not moving, okay? He's already won the victory in all of these areas that he wants so desperately for us to be resolute about. But we got to move. We got to move underneath that blessing in order to get it, right? I mean, it's so crazy to me. Okay, that's number one perspective. Number two, discipline. Okay, this is such a beautiful characteristic. When we can be disciplined, consistent, self-propelled motivation, right? We got to pray for some godly people to be in our life that call us to more, right? We become the 5 people we hang around the most, which my daughter Campbell, who never leaves the house, is like, that's so sad to me, Mom. Like, I'm going to become you and Dad. But anyway, so disciplining, consistent, self-propelled motivation. So realizing, like, no one is going to force you, guys. You gotta want to. You have to want it more than you don't want. You got to want the future that you have the ability to create with God's grace more than you want to just keep staying in the past. Like, I think that's the greatest thing when I see people finally once and for all get past the past, right? And it seems so overwhelming at times, but the reality is, like, every journey begins with this first step. And we tend to minimize because we're looking at the end. Like, we got to look at the end. We have to start with the end in mind, but then get back to that beginning place and realize, like, first I need to do this. Then I need to do that because these are my dreams. Or in the case of this show, these are your dreams. These are your goals, and they're your responsibility. Choices, commitment, and change are going to carry us into the new year in just such a different way than if we keep doing what we always did, because we're always going to get what we always got, and we're going to find ourselves accepting less than God's best, which is so sad. Like, that's so sad to me that anyone would willingly put themselves at that deficit. Okay? So number 1, perspective. Number 2, discipline. Number 3, focus. Like, let's get focused. Let's dial it in like these 3 wise guys. They dialed in the mission, right? They were able to get to a place where they could check mission accomplished because they were purposeful. They concentrated. They had this very clear visual intent of what the future was going to be. What they thought about, they brought about. What they looked for is what they found. And what was so beautiful is there was 3 of them, right? So sometimes we can't do this stuff on our own. And that's why I love to be able to partner with somebody in a coaching situation, because when I coach somebody, I believe that they come to receive all the things that they want, desire, and deserve for their life by just changing some thinking and getting focused. So I'm totally digging that. So being focused is mindfulness. It allows us the ability and the giftedness to be present through every step, right? Robin's giving me the 2 fingers. So this is about being focused. Our lives change when our habits changed. And when we are focused, when we are being focused, and we change our habitual responses from fear to faith, from frustration to faith, from failure to faith. Fail. People say failure. Fail stands for first attempt in learning. Okay? It's not over until God says it's over. And the journey is what changes you, right? So this week I am praying that if you did give up your resolution, or if you didn't even make any, let's bring them back in check. Let's get a new perspective. Let's get disciplined. Let's get focused. And if you're not going to do any of those things, then I suggest you keep it hot, honest, open, and transparent. Peace out.